Welcome to the video tutorial for the File Builder FTP tool. Basically, this is a tool that allows you to schedule and script exporting of data from ServiceNow instance. My name is Jason Petty. I'm the one that developed this tool. So first thing I wanted to talk about is what problem this tool solves. We had no way built in to ServiceNow to script or schedule the export of data from tables out to a location. And we've had a lot of customers request this because they wanted to have data exported out of ServiceNow to be consumed by other applications like reporting tool and things like that. So that's primarily what drove the development of this tool. Let's just get into demonstrating the product. The first thing you want to do is go out to Share to download this. So I'm going to show you where that's at and how to do that first. So if we change over to my browser, we're going to go out to share.servicenow.com and you're going to do a file search for File Builder FTP. And this is it. You just click here and you download it. And this is an update set that you can apply to your instance to get this product. If you click on the Details tab, there's also going to be a README down here that you can download that tells you step by step how to use this and how to install it. Right now it's version 2.9 out there, but after this video is made I will upload the 3.0 version. Once you download that, you come into your ServiceNow instance and go to Retrieved Update Sets. Click on Import Update Set from XML. Browse to the XML file you just downloaded from Share, and then click Upload. What that's going to do, it's going to bring it into your instance in a loaded state. And as you can see, I have other previous versions of this tool. This will be an upgrade for me, but this, if you have never installed this, should install just fine as a full product also. So you go into it, into the details, and you click Preview Update Set. And what this is going to do is it's going to check for any conflicts or problems before you commit it. If you come up with no problems or no conflicts, you can commit it right away. If not, you have to go preview them and then fix those conflicts and then commit it. So for our demonstration, I'm just going to commit it. Alright, so once that has been committed, what you should see is an application over here in the left navigation bar called File Builder FTP with these modules. So I'm going to go through and tell you what each one of these modules is for, and then we'll get into showing you how to configure it and use it. So the first module, called File Builder FTP Connections, this is where you define an FTP connection. And we're going to go through how to do that in a minute. The second module, File Builder File Definitions, this is where you define the file that is being built and where it's going to go to the FTP. And then the File Builder Field Definitions module is just for quick access to see the file field definitions that you've created in the file definitions. You normally would not be using this directly to create these, and you'll see that when we go and create the file definition. But this is just for quick access. This module here is for quick access to a business rule that cleans up the field definitions when you delete a file definition. This link here, the UI actions, just shows you the 3 UI actions that are part of this update set. The mid-server script include is for quick access to that script include. This script include is the one that actually does the FTPing of the file up to the FTP site. The script include is the code that actually builds the file and then puts it into the ECC queue so that it can be put on the mid-server. And then after that runs, that's when the mid-server script include runs to actually FTP it. This link takes you to the ECC queue to show you the entries for this particular integration. And then this link here, this module, is an example and documentation on how to call this in a script. And it's a sample scheduled job that has been deactivated, so it's not going to run, but it shows you how to call this from any script, and it has all the documentation on the parameters. Alright, so let's get into configuring this. So the first step is to create an FTP connection object. So you just come to this module, you click New, and you fill this information out. Now I'm going to go back to one that I've already created just to save time and show you what information gets filled in. So first thing is a name. You just name it, and this is just for inside the ServiceNow instance reference. You can give it a description. You pick a mid server that the file is going to go through, and then you put in a mid server temporary path. Now if this is Windows, it would be in this format, and it would not have a slash, forward slash, or backslash on the end of this path. And the tooltip tells you that. I put tooltips on a lot of these to make sure that it's clear what you put in that field. If it's a Linux mid server, you would have forward slashes, but you would still also not put a forward slash at the end of that. This is the location where the file is going to be put first before it gets FTP'd to your FTP server. Now this directory has to exist before it will not auto create it. So in this case, I've created a folder called File Builder on my mid server, and that's where that file is going to be put. This is the FTP server, either DNS or IP address. For the port, you can leave it blank if it's just the default for whichever method you choose. If it's different from default, then you would put that port here. The different methods that you can choose are FTP, FTPS, and SFTP. And then this is where your credentials would go, and then you check this if it's a passive connection or not. Uncheck it if it is not. Once you set those, you can right click and save or click update, and it will create that connection object. And then this section will show up. When you create one, you won't see this until you actually save. And then that would be the next step, is to create a file definition that is going to use this FTP connection that you just created. Now the advantage of doing it from here is if I click New, it automatically fills in the FTP connection for me. If I just go straight to File Definitions and click New, you can also do it here, but you have to pick your FTP connection manually. So we're just going to go into here and show you. I've already created one, so we'll just open that up and talk about all the fields that need to be filled in. Alright, so the first field is the name. This is an important field. It needs to be filled in, and it needs to, this is something that you're going to refer to in the script when you call to kick this off. So if I go back to this example script over to the example schedule job, the first parameter is the file builder definition name. That's the name that I'm referring to right here, the file definition name. So this needs to be filled in. and it needs to be something that means something to you so that it can be called from the script. The file name, there is a tooltip here that tells you if you are going to create an XML file, there are certain formatting exceptions here. It cannot have a space or start with a number, but if you do put a file name in here that starts with a number or has a space, that's okay. It will leave it, but it will replace any spaces with an underscore, and if it starts with a number, it will put an X at the beginning of the file name in the XML file that gets created, because XML nodes are not allowed to have those kind of characters. So the FTP connection is referring to the object we created in the first step. That's the one it's going to use. File destination path is the destination path on the FTP server where the file will ultimately end up. And in this path, you should end it with a / or / depending on your OS, what it accepts. If you're going to put it at the root of your FTP server, then just put a / in there like this example. But it should end in with that character. And then this file format, you have two choices. You have CSV or XML. If you pick CSV, you have all these options here, which I'll talk about here in a minute. But if you choose XML, you don't have those options. So if you choose CSV, you have include header row option. That would take all the field names that you define down here that I'll explain in a minute and put that as the first row, so you have all of the field names in that header row. You don't have to include that header row if you don't want to. You can uncheck that. You can choose tab as a delimiter. If you check this, it disables the other delimiter that you've selected. But if you unselect it, if you don't want to use tab, then you specify what your delimiter is. You can choose to pad the fields with characters. For example, a space or any character you want. You can choose to wrap the values in with a character. In this example, I'm wrapping the values with quotes. So basically, I'm going to create a CSV file that has a header row, comma delimited with quotes around the values. This next field is the source table. This is the table from ServiceNow that you want to export the data from, and you have access to all the tables in the ServiceNow instance, so you can just pick which one you want. And then you can specify an encoded query to filter those results. Instead of getting everything from the task table, in this example, I want just the incident class name records from the task table. So I'll show you real quick how you form this encoded query. So for example, if since let's say that you want to pull from the user table and you want to filter everyone from a particular department. So if you go to the user table, if you expand this filter right here where it says all, click on the little arrow, you can actually define your filter. And so if you, let's say we want everyone from the IT department. So I'm going to pick that as my filter. Okay, and that filters it down to only 11. So if I come to the last part of this breadcrumb, the last node, each node is separated by a greater than sign. If I come to the last node of this breadcrumb and I right click on it and choose copy query, that is the encoded query, and it can be as complicated as you want. This is a pretty simple example. So if I copy that and then come over here and paste that in, that's what I would do. I'm going to leave it as sysclassname incident because I'm not on the user table in this particular example. One other note, the file name can be left blank if you're going to call it from a script, because if we go back to the script example, The second parameter is the file name. So this file name will overwrite anything you have in the file definition file name field. If you leave this blank, it'll use the one in there. And then you can also pass the encoded query in and then the type. So those are the 4 parameters that are documented here. So let's go back to the file definition example. We could leave this blank, and then whenever we call it from the script, that's the file name that will get created. All right, so let's talk about creating the fields that we want in this file. So there's a few ways you can do this. The first way is to manually create them. So you could come down here and give it a name. This field name is the field name in the file that you're going to be creating. So it can be anything you want. Field size, you specify the size. Now keep in mind, if you make that too small, it will truncate the length of that field. So if you have values in the first name that are longer than 32 characters in this example, it'll truncate it and cut it off. Then you put the order. This specifies the order that it's going to be in the file that gets created. Source field from the task table. So you would need to know what the field name is. So for example, I know there's a field called number. That would be the incident number. And then the value type, you have 3 choices. You pick value, display value, or hard-coded. Value would be just the raw value of that field. If it's just a text field, it's going to get the value, but if it's a reference field, it will get the sysID of the object reference. That's why you can choose display value. If it is a reference field, you can get the actual display value rather than the sysID. So for this one, we'll just pick value. And we'll just create another one. Short description, 100, ordered 1, short description is the field name, and then we'll put value. Now we can also create our own little field with a hard-coded value. So I'm just going to create one as an example, and I'm going to say it's 5 characters long, order 2, and if I set this to hard-coded, whatever you put in here, this text will actually get put into that field on every record. Okay, just like that. And then we're just going to save that. That's one way of creating the fields. So if we execute this, first thing you want to do as soon as you execute it, come to the ECC queue, and you can see that it creates an output record. And you can actually go look at this, and the value of the payload is just the file that we just created in base64 encoding. So if we copy that, we can decode that and look at that file. And as you can see, the first line is the field names, and then all the rest are comma delimited with quotes around the values for each record that we grabbed out of that table. Now if you look at the ECC queue, you'll see that it had an output, and then it processed, and then a reply. So if we go look at the FTP server, we'll see that file there. And if we download that and go look at it, open it with text edit, we'll see the same thing we saw in the ECC queue. So that's kind of how it works. And if you notice, you can see how it is truncating some of those fields because of the length that I specified. So let's go back to the other example. So here's an example, SFTP. I've created a connection to a different FTP server. It's an SFTP server, and put in the credentials and created a file definition. This one is going to be an XML file, and it's going to be put into that directory, and it's going to be users in this particular department. So if I execute that now, go to the ECC queue and watch it, as soon as that output at the top goes to processed, then it should be done, and I can check my FTP server. That file is there. If I download that and let's go look at it. Open that with, so that's the file it just created. It created the first node with the file name, and then sysuser record for each node, and then you got the field name that we specified, and then the values in each one. Alright, let me show you a couple other ways to define those fields. Let's say I don't want to define all these manually, so I'm going to delete these for now. There's a couple of related links here. One's called auto-populate all fields labels, and one's called auto-populate all fields DB field name. Okay, so I'm going to show the labels first. So let's say this task table, I want to go and get all the fields in that table and define them for me. So if I click this, that's what it will do, is it'll go out, it'll read that table, grab all the fields from that table, and I clicked the labels one, so it uses the field label as the field name, and it fills it in for you. It reads the field size for you, automatically puts, in increments of 10 order, in alphabetical order, and then any non-reference field it'll set as value, and then any reference field it'll set as display value by default. You can change these if you want, but you notice that it got 63 of them. And you can run this again if you want. If you accidentally delete one and then run it again, it should not duplicate them. And then that's one way of doing it. The other one, let me show you what happens with the DB field name link. So I'm going to delete these and show you this one. So if you click on DB field name, instead of labels, it will use the actual field name, same as the source field, as the field name. So you have both of those options. One note, if you are going to export an XML, these field names have the same restrictions as the file name. All spaces will be replaced with underscores, and if field name starts with a number, an X will be placed in front of it. I'll show you what I mean by that. So if I 1, 2, 3, 4 is the field name, I will get prompted telling me that an X will be put in the beginning of that tag in the XML. So I'm going to make it 3 characters long, and or first one in the list, and then I'm going to hard code something and set that to hard coded. So I'll save that. Now if I execute this, we'll go watch the ECC queue. So let's download it, replace the one we already downloaded. Let's look at Alright, so let's look at this file that it created. So the first one, see how it put that X in the name there? That's our hard-coded value. And then all the other fields come in into that file that gets generated too. So that's kind of how it works. I wanted to show you two other things about field definitions. When you're creating a field, you can dot walk on the source field to get a value. So you can put in a field like manager department here, and then in the source field you can actually dot walk. So since we're on the user table, you can put in manager dot department dot name, for example, and it will go get that value from the other table and put it into that file. So that is possible on the source field. And then one other thing is when you use this auto-populate all fields labels link to fill in all the field names, some field names or some field labels in ServiceNow have forward slashes in them, like state/province and zip/postal code in the label. And so I replace those forward slashes with dashes so that this will actually run without errors. So please go out to share, and if you have any comments, post them there. That'd be great. I follow that, and then I'll try to respond. The new features are documented in the README that is out there on Share. So I added a few new features since the last 2.9 version into the 3.0 version. All right, well, thanks for joining me on this video tutorial on the File Builder FTP export tool.